So that I think that is one of the areas in which I think that this game is somehow about AI's male gender identity. In that there is this progression from the untouched jungle to the extremely fabricated space station. Okay, so that's one way, and perhaps the archetype of the active or the masculine is appearing in this game. This may lend a little more credence to my idea that the bananas literally do have a phallic value in this game, despite being, you know, monkey food. And that AI is desirous of integrating the phallus. That somehow Gon is a threatening male figure who comes from outside to steal AI, right? It's the Kremlins from Donkey Kong. It's this male fear of the shadow, represented as another male figure, who comes from the outside, kind of like a lot of UFO abduction stories as well, where the fear seems to lie on the fact that the alien comes from the outside, from the unknown, and ties the abductee to a table and performs all sorts of medical and sexual exams on them. So there is a loss of power, there is a loss of power at many levels. And I think that these kind of experiences speak to that, to a shadow aspect of the way in which loss of power is seen as something extremely threatening to the male ego, right? To be in a position of loss of power is something that is not... It's an experience that hasn't been integrated or accepted, despite, in my opinion, being an integral part of the self. So that's one half of the equation. The thing is, what's happening in this game, I think, then, is that the fear of a lack of control, which AI has, the fear of not being in control, is Gon, right? AI is projecting his shadow onto Gon because that fear of submitting to an experience, or as I said before, the description of the passive orientation, which would be changing your will in accordance to external circumstance, is precisely what is preventing the active orientation from fully expressing itself. See, that's the paradox, that by not allowing itself to lose control, it can't ever fully gain control either. The loss of control and the gain of control go together. And by repressing one side, that is to say, by kicking Gon out of his island and being afraid of these external invasions from the unknown, AI is also kicking out the active principle, which then expresses itself through this game in this like progressive advancement of technology, I think, in a way that allows a conjunction of opposites to occur, right? AI integrates that activity. AI has gone from the jungle, which was his homeland, up into a fucking space station. So he somehow like embodied that. He's embodied that process of technology crafting and therefore of active manipulation of one's environment. But by doing that, a conjuncture has happened, and this is clear in the final cutscene. Since we have a visual conjunctio, we have Mimi and AI as the, let's say, the passive and active principles, here represented again for whatever reasons, for whatever historical reasons, represented as the female and the male monkeys, with the baby in the middle. So there's a conjunction of opposites being generated, being created. And of course, how interesting then that the pinnacle of this technological adventure ends up being Saturn. It's a space station next to Saturn, who is the archetypal old father. So if the whole game... Remember, this whole interpretation is based on my assumption that the Grand Monkey is a male god. In that sense, what II is doing is ascending to a male god as well. Ascending to Saturn, ascending to old father time. So there's that. Considering what I've said then, I want to return to this scene, which is Monkey Mall. Electricity arrives on the scene. I'm sure there's some strange McLuhan way of interpreting this, which I'm not aware of now. But my way of interpreting it is that electricity here, the electric guitar, the electricity lighting up the neon signs, the electricity lighting up the streets down below, is the next big thing. It almost represents technology, I think, here. Technology is, again, as the active control of one's environment. Because it almost, electricity is almost like the archetypal image of energy in that sense. It's like something that, when in one's control, allows for a manipulation of the material world. It allows for the will to be, projected onto the material world in ways that weren't possible before. So it's some sort of a breakthrough, I think. The reason I think it's a breakthrough in this game is because of this level, because of the water level. Because now we move from Monkey Mall to underwater. And instantly, something very strange is happening. First of all, electricity is being used, again, as I said, in an extremely more advanced way than before. Even the area mimics this, right? This level is shaped as cogwheels. So it's mimicking the idea of a machine, of technology. And yeah, many other of the platforms you're using seem to be shaped as like pieces in a machine. So somehow the electricity introduced in the previous area has exploded exponentially in this area. That's one of the things that's happening. But it's not the only one, of course. The most obvious one is that we're underwater. So for the first time in the game, we are contradicting the ascent motif, right? The game is following a certain ascent motif. You're going up and up and up and up. The first three areas follow that pretty literally. You go up from the jungle to a place up in the clouds, and then from the clouds up to a place further up, it seems. Again, to recap, you're also going up in time, because you go from one stage to the next, and this level, in terms of time, does fit into that model, because this does seem to be more advanced than the Monkey Mall. However, things are not going to so cleanly fit into these models from now on. And yet I think that these models can tell us something interesting about this game. What can be said about this level then is that, you know, we are climbing up, but we're underwater. If you see, I'm just going to see if I can show you. It's hard to tell, but I think that we are this dark patch over here, I think, is a hole. See? This is clearly some sort of a ravine. It's an underwater-like hole. Now, several things happen then here. And is that you could potentially explain this whole operation, these submarines and these water space stations, as being a mining operation. Something is being mined out of the ground. However, there's nothing really that lets me make that interpretation. There aren't really any drills or things that seem to suggest that. However, I don't know. What I'd like to suggest for the time being, though, as an alternative to that, is that if there is a hole underground, literally below us, then it means that we could have climbed up through that hole, or that in some way the game may be trying to suggest that you are climbing up. You've gone up through a hole in the ground, but now you're underground, as if you were climbing levels in hell, something like that. In the same way that, you know, hell, in the layered image of hell, the sort of Dante kind of hell. It doesn't really matter if one layer is an ocean and the other layer is a desert. They are like thematically one above the other. And perhaps that hole under the water is trying to suggest that you've climbed up into a new type of space and time, a new domain. But that's not everything. The other thing that can be said about this and this is just a hunch at the time being, is that I think that the water may represent electricity itself. We often talk of electricity in terms of currents, right? A current of electricity. We use water language to describe it. So if electricity was discovered in the last area, let's remember that last area seemed to be using the metaphor of music to talk about electricity, the electric guitar and the G clef, to talk about something that wasn't necessarily extremely related to music. In this way, in this level, it almost seems as well as if the platforms are representing machines and they're surrounded by water. Well, why is the theme of machinery so heavily associated to water, despite machines, you know, usually being considered something dry? I think it could be that water here is electricity. It's a current of electricity. But so there is a flood of electricity has happened. So it's an exponential surge in electrical power, here represented as water. So now the world has gone from downtown Monkey Mall up to a flood of electricity, the electricity that was discovered in the previous area. I have nothing to back this up other than the fact that water seems to play a thematic role in the coming areas, which doesn't easily explain itself, but that does seem to exist as a theme, I think. And it is this. It is that